$400. That is what the service writer quoted me to clear a warning light that took him less time than ordering a coffee. That yellow glow on your dash is not a mystery code. It is a profit center, and dealers count on you not knowing the difference. 13 lights, 13 resets you can do yourself. Number 7 alone has saved riders I know over $1,000 in shop visits. Most of these take under a minute. Let me show you exactly what they are hiding. Number 13. The check engine light reset. They buried in your manual. That yellow fault triangle glowing on your gauge cluster is not a diagnostic mystery. It is a stored trouble code in your ECM, and Harley built a clearing procedure right into your ignition switch. Here is what happens at the dealer. They plug in a scan tool, read the code, clear it, and hand you a bill for $300 to $400. The entire process takes maybe 90 seconds of actual work. The rest is paperwork and waiting room theater. The procedure they do not advertise lives in your owner's manual somewhere around page 200, depending on your model year. Turn your ignition to the accessory position. Do not start the engine. Hold down the odometer reset button. Cycle to the diagnostic screen. The bike will display any stored codes right there on your dash. From that same menu, you can clear them yourself. On Milwaukee 8 Touring models from 2017 forward, this diagnostic mode is accessible through the infotainment system. Navigate to Settings, then Vehicle Info, then Diagnostics. The codes appear in plain text. The clear function is one button away. I have watched riders pay $150 per visit for this exact reset after routine maintenance trips. Do that 6 times and you have spent $900 on something your ignition switch does for free. The scan tool costs about that much if you want to own one, but you probably do not need it. Your bike speaks a language Harley programmed into it at the factory. The dealer just convinced you that you needed a translator. Number 12. The ABS light that needs a rag, not a technician. That ABS warning sends riders straight to the service counter because anti-lock brakes feel like serious business, and they are. But the light itself rarely indicates a serious problem. Your Harley runs wheel speed sensors at each rotor. These sensors read the rotation rate through a toothed ring and report back to the ABS module. When the module sees a signal dropout, it throws a warning and stores a code. Dealers pull the wheel, inspect the sensor, run diagnostics, and bill you $200 to $300 to tell you what was wrong. 9 times out of 10, the problem is road grime. Brake dust, water contamination, packed mud from that last gravel road. The sensor cannot read through debris, so it reports a fault. Here is the fix. Get your bike on a lift or center stand. Locate the ABS sensor on your wheel assembly. It is a small cylindrical unit with a wire running to it, usually mounted near the rotor. Clean the sensor face with a rag. Check the air gap between the sensor and the tone ring. Your service manual specifies the gap, usually around 0.025 inches. If the gap looks good and the sensor is clean, clear the code using the method from number 13. Before you do any of this, visually inspect the sensor wire for damage. A frayed wire or loose connector will throw the same code, and no amount of cleaning fixes that. The ABS light is your bike asking you to check something. It is not asking for $400. Number 11. The tire pressure light running on a dead battery. When that TPMS warning illuminates, most riders assume system failure. The dealer reinforces this by quoting $180 or more for diagnosis and sensor replacement. What they rarely mention is that each tire pressure sensor runs on a small battery, and batteries die. Your Harley's TPMS sensors are self-contained units mounted inside the wheel. They transmit pressure data wirelessly to the BCM. When the battery inside that sensor drops below operating voltage, the sensor stops transmitting. Your bike reads this silence as a system fault and throws the warning light. Replacement sensors run $12 to $25 online. You can find them at any motorcycle parts supplier. The installation requires breaking the tire bead, which means you either need tire spoons and a bead breaker or a quick trip to any independent tire shop. Most shops charge $15 to $30 for the mount and balance since you are supplying your own sensor. Total cost for a DIY sensor swap runs about $40, including shop labor for the tire work. Compare that to the dealer quote of $180 or more, and the math speaks for itself. One detail most riders miss: after installing a new sensor, you need to repair it with your BCM. On most touring models, this happens automatically after a few miles of riding. On some years, you may need to run a quick reset through the infotainment diagnostics. Your service manual covers the pairing procedure for your specific model year. That TPMS light is not a system failure. It is a battery asking to be replaced. Number 10. The security light and the $3 fix. Your security system light starts flashing erratically. The dealer diagnoses a failing key fob module and quotes you $300 for parts and labor. You hand over the keys and wonder how a motorcycle security system became this complicated. Here is what actually happens in most cases. The battery inside your key fob drops below operating voltage. The fob transmits a weak signal. Your bike's security module receives a partial handshake and flags an error. The light flashes. The dealer sells you a module. A replacement fob battery costs between $2 and $4 at any pharmacy or electronics store. Most Harley fobs use a CR2032 cell. The fob splits apart with a small flathead screwdriver or a coin. Swap the battery, reassemble, and test. If the light persists after a fresh battery, check the fob housing for corrosion. A small amount of contact cleaner on the battery terminals often resolves intermittent issues. I've seen riders replace entire security modules when the real problem was oxidation on a $3 battery contact. There is one edge case to watch for. If your fob has physical damage, water intrusion, or a cracked circuit board, the battery swap will not help. But that scenario accounts for maybe 1 in 20 security light complaints. The other 19 are dead batteries that nobody at the dealer mentioned. Your key fob runs on the same battery technology as a wristwatch. It does not require dealer intervention to replace. Number 9. The oil pressure warning and the $15 sensor. That oil pressure warning stops your heart when it flickers on mid-ride. You pull over, check the dipstick, see adequate oil, and wonder what catastrophic failure is about to strand you. The dealer confirms your worst fears by quoting major diagnostic work. What they rarely investigate first is the sensor itself. Your oil pressure warning light activates when the oil pressure sensor reads below a threshold, usually around 5 to 8 psi depending on model. The sensor is a simple electrical switch. Pressure pushes against a diaphragm. The diaphragm moves a contact, and the contact tells your ECM whether pressure is adequate. These sensors fail. They corrode. They read false lows. And when they do, your warning light activates even though your actual oil pressure is perfectly healthy. A replacement oil pressure sensor runs $12 to $20 from most suppliers. Installation requires draining a small amount of oil, removing the old sensor with a wrench, and threading in the new one. Apply a small amount of thread sealant, torque to spec, and top off your oil. Total job time is about 20 minutes. Now here is what most people get completely wrong about this light. It does not measure oil level, it measures oil pressure. You can have a full crankcase and still throw this warning if the sensor fails, or if your oil pump is struggling. So yes, a bad sensor is the most common cause, but if your new sensor still shows low pressure, do not ignore it. That scenario requires actual diagnosis. The difference between a $15 sensor and an engine rebuild is knowing which one applies to your situation. Number 6. The charging light and the corroded connection. Halfway through this list, and you are starting to see the pattern. Dealer quotes $400 to $600 for a stator replacement. The battery light stays on. You assume the charging system is cooked, but before you authorize that repair, grab a wire brush and some dielectric grease. Your charging system runs through multiple connection points between the stator, the voltage regulator, and your battery. Every one of these connections is a potential failure point. Corroded terminals, loose ground wires, oxidized connectors. Any one of them can cause voltage drops that trigger your charging warning. Start at the battery terminals. Remove them, clean them with a wire brush or battery terminal cleaner, and apply a thin coat of dielectric grease before reinstalling. Check the ground wire where it bolts to the frame. Same procedure. Then follow the main harness to the voltage regulator. Inspect each connector for green corrosion or heat damage. On touring models, the regulator sits behind the left saddlebag. On Softails, check near the transmission. Dynas typically have the regulator under the seat. Your service manual shows the exact location for your year. I have seen riders replace perfectly good stators because nobody checked the 20-year-old battery cable with a 1/4 inch of corrosion hidden under the terminal boot. A 15-minute cleaning solves what the dealer quoted as a full-day repair. The stator itself almost never fails on bikes under 50,000 miles. The connections fail constantly. Clean every terminal in the charging circuit before you approve any parts replacement. Number 7. The fuel system malfunction that takes 3 seconds. Stop here for a moment. This is the light that convinced me most riders are being systematically overtrained to panic. I watched a buddy get quoted $280 for fuel system diagnostics on a road glide with 12,000 miles. The tech spent 45 minutes running tests. The actual problem took 3 seconds to fix. His gas cap was loose. Your fuel system warning monitors tank pressure as part of the evaporative emissions controls. When the cap does not seal, the system reads a pressure leak and flags a fault. The light illuminates. The dealer runs a smoke test, checks the fuel pump, inspects the injectors, and bills you for the privilege of eventually discovering a loose cap. Here is the reset. Turn off the bike. Remove the gas cap completely. Check the rubber seal for cracks or debris. Reinstall the cap and turn it until you hear multiple clicks. Start the bike and let it run for a few minutes. On many models, the light clears itself after a few drive cycles once the system confirms the pressure is stable. If the light persists after a proper cap seal, the next culprit is usually the purge valve or a cracked vent line, but those are second and third tier causes. The cap accounts for the vast majority of fuel system warnings on bikes under warranty age. 3 seconds. That is what separates a $280 diagnostic from a 1/4 turn of your gas cap. Number 6. The turn signal indicator and the $4 bulb. We are past the halfway mark now, and if you are still watching, you already understand something most riders never figure out. These lights are not mysterious computer problems. They are basic electrical signals your bike is sending you in plain language. Your turn signal indicator stays lit continuously instead of flashing. The dealer mentions wiring harness inspection and quotes labor by the hour. The actual cause in most cases is a burnout bulb throwing off the circuit resistance. Turn signal circuits use a flasher relay that operates based on electrical load. When one bulb burns out, the load changes and the relay behaves differently. On some models, the indicator stays solid. On others, it flashes rapidly. Both symptoms point to the same cause. Walk around your bike with the signals activated. Find the bulb that is not illuminating. Remove the lens cover, pull the bulb, and check the filament. A replacement bulb costs $3 to $5 at any auto parts store. Match the bulb number, install it, and your flasher circuit returns to normal. On models with LED conversions, the troubleshooting is slightly different. LEDs draw less current than incandescent bulbs, which can cause rapid flashing even when all bulbs work. The fix is a load equalizer installed in the circuit, available for $10 to $15. The wiring harness almost never fails on these circuits. The bulbs fail constantly. Start with the obvious before authorizing a wiring inspection. Number 5. The coolant temperature warning and the air bubble factory. Touring riders know this panic. That temperature warning illuminates on a hot day in stop-and-go traffic, and you start calculating how far you are from a dealer. The gauges show elevated temps. You assume the cooling system is compromised. What nobody told you at delivery is that liquid-cooled Harleys sometimes leave the factory with air trapped in the cooling system. This air bubble migrates to the temperature sensor location and causes false high readings. The engine is not actually overheating. The sensor is reading the temperature of air instead of coolant. Purging the air takes about 10 minutes and 0 special tools. Park the bike on level ground. Remove the coolant reservoir cap with the engine cool. Start the bike and let it idle. As the engine warms, air bubbles will rise to the reservoir. You may see small bubbles escaping. Run the engine until the thermostat opens and coolant begins circulating freely. Top off the reservoir to the correct level and reinstall the cap. On some touring models, there is a dedicated bleed screw on the cooling system. Check your service manual for the location. Opening this screw while purging allows trapped air to escape faster. After a complete purge, the false temperature warnings typically stop. If the warning persists and your coolant level is correct, the next step is checking the thermostat or water pump. But air in the system from factory fill is the most common cause on low-mileage bikes. Your dealer sold you a bike with an air bubble and then charged to diagnose it. Number 4. The cruise control fix that costs less than a soda. That cruise control malfunction warning triggers, and the dealer immediately goes to the integrated electronic throttle module. They quote labor-intensive diagnostics and parts that run into the hundreds. Meanwhile, the actual culprit is probably stuck to the bottom of your brake lever. Your cruise control system monitors the brake light circuit as a safety interlock. When you touch the brakes, cruise disengages. The system confirms this disengagement by reading the brake light switch. If that switch sticks in the engaged position, the cruise control module sees constant brake input and flags a fault. The brake light switch is a small mechanical or hydraulic switch mounted on your brake lever or master cylinder. Over time, road grime, corrosion, and moisture can cause it to stick. The fix is a $2 can of electrical contact cleaner. Locate your brake light switch. With the ignition off, spray contact cleaner into and around the switch mechanism. Work the brake lever multiple times to distribute the cleaner. Wipe away any excess. Let it dry for a few minutes and test the system. If cleaning does not resolve the issue, replacement switches run $15 to $25 and install in about 10 minutes. They thread in or bolt on depending on the model year. The electronic throttle module fails occasionally on high mileage bikes, but it is one of the least likely causes of cruise control warnings. The brake light switch fails constantly because it is exposed to weather and road debris. Check the $3 part before authorizing the $300 diagnosis. Number 3. The service reminder and the paperclip reset. We are closing in on number 1 now, and what you are about to learn about that final light makes everything else look like pocket change. But first, the service reminder. That maintenance light illuminates at preset intervals to remind you of oil changes and other scheduled service. The dealer insists their proprietary software is required to reset it. They charge $50 to $100 just to clear a timer that has nothing to do with how your engine is actually running. On most Harley models from the CAN bus era forward, the reset sequence requires no tools and no scan equipment. Turn the ignition to accessory position. Press and hold the odometer reset button. Cycle through the display menus until you reach the service interval screen. Hold the reset button for 5 seconds until the interval resets to 0. On older models with simpler displays, the reset involves a specific button press sequence during startup. Your service manual documents the exact sequence for your year. For models that resist the button sequence, a paperclip trick works on certain diagnostics ports. The data link connector under your seat has specific pins that, when bridged momentarily, trigger a service reset. This is the same reset the dealer performs with their scan tool, just without the scan tool. The service reminder is not monitoring your engine, it is counting miles. You can reset it the moment you complete your own oil change using parts from any supplier. This light exists to drive you to the dealer. It has no other diagnostic purpose. Number 2. The dark speedometer and the hidden fuse. Your instrument cluster goes dark. No speedometer, no tach, no fuel gauge. The dealer diagnoses a failed instrument cluster and quotes $700 to $800 for replacement and programming. You assume the electronics are fried. Before you authorize that repair, find the fuse Harley hid in a location designed to discourage you from looking. On touring models, the instrument cluster fuse is buried behind the fairing, accessible only after removing multiple panels. On Softails, it may be tucked under the seat in a secondary fuse block that most riders never notice exist. Dynas hide them in equally obscure locations. A blown fuse kills the entire cluster while leaving every other system operational. The fuse blows from momentary electrical spikes, accessory installation errors, or simple age. The replacement fuse costs under $1. Here is the procedure. Locate your main fuse block using your service manual. Check every fuse related to the instrument panel circuit. Pull each fuse and visually inspect the element. A blown fuse shows a broken metal strip inside the plastic housing. Replace any blown fuses with the correct amperage rating. If the fuse blows again immediately after replacement, you have a short circuit that requires actual diagnosis. But a single blown fuse from a random spike accounts for the majority of dead cluster complaints. I have personally witnessed a dealer quote $825 for a cluster replacement on a bike that needed a $2 fuse. The rider only discovered this after paying for the diagnosis. Number 1. The reset they built an entire business around. This is the light that generates more dealer revenue than any other warning on your dash. I saved it for last because when you understand what it actually represents, you will see the entire service department business model for what it is. The idle relearn indicator. After a battery disconnect, accessory installation, or ECM update, your throttle-by-wire system requires an adaptive relearn procedure. The bike runs rough at idle. The response feels sluggish. A warning light appears. The dealer charges $150 to $200 for what they call an ECM throttle recalibration. They plug in their scan tool, run a preset routine, and bill you for their time. The procedure is built into your ignition switch. Turn the ignition to run. Do not start the engine. Wait for the fuel pump to prime and the dash to complete its startup sequence. Turn the ignition off. Wait 10 seconds. Repeat this cycle 5 times. On the 6th cycle, start the engine and let it idle without touching the throttle for 2 to 3 minutes. The ECM relearns the idle position and throttle response maps automatically. That is the entire procedure. 5 ignition cycles and a few minutes of idling. No scan tool, no dealer appointment, no $150 line item. I documented a Midwest dealer charging $425 for diagnostics plus $150 for idle relearn on a single visit, $575 total. An independent shop on the same street charges $140 flat for the identical result. But the real cost is zero if you know the ignition sequence that Harley engineers programmed into every throttle-by-wire model. This light exists because dealers discovered that throttle-by-wire systems create a recurring revenue opportunity. Every battery disconnect, every winter storage reconnection, every accessory install triggers the need for relearn. And every rider who does not know the key sequence pays for the privilege. The $400 diagnostic is not revealing hidden problems. It is monetizing your unfamiliarity with your own motorcycle. The bike already knows how to fix itself. You just needed someone to show you the sequence. 13 lights, 13 resets. Every one of them is your bike communicating in a language Harley built right into the controls. The dealer profits when you believe you need a translator. Now you know you never did. If this saved you even one service visit, hit subscribe. The next video covers what they charge for basic maintenance and why none of it requires their shop.